Let's Get Tryin is a podcast that challenges us to live real and authentic lives, no matter the journey we're on. From life to faith to even mental health, host Aaron Lee presents the importance of never giving up. So let's get Tryin with Aaron Lee.
Welcome to this episode of Let's Get Tryin. I'm your host, Aaron Lee, and this is a podcast all about never giving up, living real, and being authentic. And that's why we push forward, lean into this whole authenticity thing, because when we do that, the Lord's going to bless it. The Lord's going to use it. And honestly, we live in a very fake society right now that doesn't want to be real, doesn't want to be authentic. And so to keep going in this world, we need to be real. We need to be authentic. And that's what this podcast is all about. So we hit on different topics from, like was said in the intro, we hit on faith topics, we hit on mental health issues, those kind of things. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about habits. And I don't know if you have a good awareness of the habits that you have in your life, but I would imagine if you're listening to this episode, maybe you're wanting to learn more about that. So I'm incredibly glad that you're here and that you're joining us for this episode. I have to ask, I ask this every time, and I can't do anything else but plead. Please, if these episodes are helpful to you, please share them on your social media. Please share them with your friends and family. And be sure to hit the subscribe button, rate and review as well. Also, head over to YouTube. If for those of you who are watching on YouTube, thank you for joining us here. If you're listening in your car, that's totally fine. But we have a YouTube channel. You just go over to YouTube, type Aaron Lee, Let's Get Tryin, and you should be able to find us. And what's really great about that is we have a video podcast piece to this whole thing. And then we also have a segment called Never Give Up, the little 3 to 5 minute videos, just literally about the never giving up idea. And you should check those out. Would love it if you would do that. But like I said, in this episode, we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly habits that can creep into our lives or have creeped into our lives, and maybe evaluating that and asking the question of, what are these habits in my life? Are they bringing me closer to the Lord, or are they pushing me away? And that's a huge question. That's a really important piece for all of us. So let's jump into today's topic. All right, let's start off by asking this question. Are habits a God-given thing, or are they a man-given thing? I don't even know if that's a word, but are they something that God created for us to use, or are they a result of the fall of man? So we're cursed, so we have these things called habits. Now, I want you to understand, I'm no expert here, but I believe that these are God-given things. But just like anything that God creates, we can abuse them. I don't know if you realize that, but God created so much beauty in this world, but we take it and we taint it and make it something that it's not intended to be. So maybe we do that with habits too. So let's start back at the creation story. Let's talk about Genesis 1. It's particularly what he's doing in verses 4 and 5. It says, "Then God said, 'Let there be light.' And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. Then he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness night. And evening passed and morning came, marking the first day." God created a habit. You see this? He created a cycle. He created this beautiful thing that happens over and over and over, both to give us rest and to give us creativity. But we have this beautiful ebb and flow of night and day that God created us. He made it a tool for us. He made habits a tool for us. I love that. So let's talk about what a habit actually is, okay? Because maybe we don't have a good understanding of that. Maybe we're all wrestling through what that actually is and what it means. Well, in the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this book because I really, really like it, and it's a really good book. He talks about we all have this thing called the habit loop. And what it's made up of is cues, routines, and rewards. So imagine a circle, and there's 3 dots on that circle. And the first dot is your cue. And your cue is the trigger. It's the thing that triggers your brain to want to use a habit and which habit to use. And then it moves down to the routine. And that's the activity, the behavior, the emotion that you use based on that trigger, that cue. And then you move on over to the next point, and that's the reward. It's what your brain determines as something that benefits you. Now, we got to keep this in mind. Our brain doesn't know long-term what's a benefit to us. It's only thinking in the now. It's thinking survival. It's thinking, what do I do to keep moving, keep going, keep doing what I'm doing? And so the cue leads us to the routine, and the routine leads us to the reward. And then it goes right back around, and it just creates this cycle. And so that's what the habit loop is, and that's what a habit is. So let's talk about a couple of examples of a habit. So maybe you feel bored, and that's a cue. And so you grab your phone, and that's a routine. And the reward is you get a dopamine hit, a chemical released in your brain for pleasure that then tells you, oh man, you got that hit from a social media like, and oh, that's a benefit to me. So then you get bored again, and you pick up your phone, and you get another dopamine hit. You see what I'm saying? It's this habit loop. Another one would be you go to the bathroom, is your cue. You wash your hands. That's your routine. And your reward is your hands feel clean. Okay, maybe another one is you've not had a great day, and that's a cue. Well, and maybe you start self-talking about how much of a failure you are, and that's a routine. So you have a bad day, you start thinking this. And then from that, you start justifying why you had a bad day, and that's a reward that you get. I know the reward seems weird, like how is that a reward? But it's justifying why you had a bad day. So we have to look at habits as the cue, the routine, and the reward, because those are the three things that make up a habit loop. Habits are a beautiful thing, and they're a beautiful way for us to grow into the people that we want to be and who we're created to be, but they can also be destructive. They can create isolation. They can create issues with self-confidence. They can even move us away from the Lord. So we have to be very careful at evaluating habits in our lives and asking the question, is this drawing me closer to Him, or is this pushing me away? So over the course of this episode, we're going to be talking about good habits, bad habits, and the ugly habits. And so you can imagine what those habits are like as we talk about them, and we'll define them as we go. But before we jump into these habits, we need to make an important observation. Habits are both a very difficult thing to create, and if you know anything about a habit, they are a very difficult thing to get rid of. And so actually, habits are almost impossible to get rid of. We can replace them, but they can really cause destruction to our lives. So I know that's a huge bummer, but hang in there. I think it's good for us to know what habits are. And I want to be clear too, just hear me out in this. This episode isn't about creating new habits, but it's about evaluating the habits that we have right now. There are better resources than me out there to help you create good habits in your life. And that book I mentioned is one of them, Atomic Habits by James Clear. I'll put it in the show notes, as well as a book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And both those books, you can find them on Amazon or Audible. That's a great resource. So check those out. So let's jump into our first, what is a good habit? All right, can you name some good habits that you have in your life right now? Do you know of good habits that are in your life? Maybe one of those good habits is that each morning you get up and you read the Bible. Maybe it's before you go to bed every night, you say a prayer thanking God for the day. Maybe it's that you turn off your phone when you get home from work and you spend more time with your family. Those are great habits. One of the good habits that we have in our family is we do this thing called high-low, and we sing this song, high-low, how did your day go? And it's really cool because we all do it and we sing it. and we ask the person, how did their day go? And they tell us, this was the high of my day and this was the low of my day. And yes, I do have some young kids, so we get some really funny answers sometimes. But it's really cool because you get to celebrate things together, but you also get to talk about hard things together. So it's a really cool habit that we've created in our lives. So our cue is to sit down at the table. Our routine is to do this high-low thing. And I believe that the reward is that we grow as a family. And that's super cool. So, man, good habits have the ability, and we need to remember this. They have the ability to bring consistency. And I believe they have the ability to bring encouragement to our lives and to other people's lives. Good habits can be anything that benefits you or someone else. Anything. So think about that. That's a powerful thing. Like, look at the habits in your life and say, man, this is a really cool thing because it benefits me and it benefits someone else. All right. So how do you know if you have a good habit in your life? Maybe you're that person, you're like, I don't know. I haven't really figured that out yet. Here's a real practical thing you can do. Go online, find a blank daily calendar and print it out and write down on a piece of paper, real specific, hour by hour or 30 minutes by 30 minutes, and say, man, I get up at 6 a.m. I brush my teeth. I brush my hair. I make a cup of coffee. And you just go down the list. Go all the way through your entire day. And I think that as you look at those things, you'll start to see a pattern. Is this what happens on an average day? Well, there's habits. I wake up, I go brush my teeth. I feel like my teeth are clean. Those are those habit loops that are happening. They're things that you don't even really think about that you do. And so look at those good things in your life. See if you have good habits in your life and celebrate that. Again, from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, I love this quote. It says, every action you take is a vote for the type person you wish to become. No single instance will transform your beliefs, but as the votes build up, so does the evidence of your new identity. I love that because, see, habits are formed over these small little incremental things. They're just growing snowball effect. It's going to get bigger and better. That's good habits. We want good habits to do that. So keep living those out. If you have those in your life, keep celebrating. Put into practice new habits that will benefit you and encourage people. And I believe it'll make the world a better place. While we each have good habits, we also have bad ones. And yours may be like as small as, you bite your nails on a regular basis. Or maybe it's a little bigger than that, and it's you stress eat when you've had a rough day. And I'm guilty of that one for sure. And I just want to point out something. Can we just stop for a second and say this? What is up with these people that have bad days and then they have no appetite? Like, I have a bad day and I want to eat the entire East Coast. Like, what's up with that? I wish I was those people. Never mind. I'm venting. But no, seriously, bad habits, they tend to be like the mild ones. They're the ones that have just kind of pulled us off our course, and they tend to be the things that we cope with during our day, especially when we have like a bad work situation or a relationship issue with a friend or a family member. And a lot of times, I believe we try to justify these habits. We try to say, it's not that big a deal, or I really needed that pair of shoes. And this is just a place where we can either make or break ourselves. Think about that. We can either make or break ourselves with bad habits. We're going to talk about the ugly ones. And I'm afraid that those bad habits, if not put in check, will lead us to the ugly ones. So we can either turn things toward the Lord or we can turn them away from him. Now, there's a passage of scripture that I've used many times that I love from Romans 12. It's Romans 12:2, and it says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what the will of God is, his good, acceptable, and perfect will. And I love that because if you look at your life, a lot of times we're trying to fill a void. We're trying to fill a void in our lives. And we often fill it with things of this world. So Paul's telling us, don't conform to the pattern of this world. But then he says, follow the Lord, allow the Lord to transform your mind, and you will see this powerful benefit from it, that you'll see what the Lord's will is, and you can draw into that and lean closer to that. So maybe your boss just yelled at you today. Maybe you're driving home and you're super frustrated because your boss was so angry with you. And if you're like me, you let that wreck your mind. You feel broken and hurt. So what do you do with those feelings? What's the habit that you lean into when your mind is wrecked? Is it prayer or is it retail therapy? What about your kids going nuts, being punks? Obviously, that'll trigger you. I don't know who could get by without those things triggering you. But what's your routine with that? Do you scream and yell at them all over and over and over again? Or do you ask the Lord for wisdom and confidence that this too shall pass? Now, listen to me. I don't want you to think that I'm telling you to try harder, because that is something I just don't believe is the message we want to get across. While it does require us to try, we keep trying. It doesn't mean that it's all about works. Sometimes we just have to lean into the Lord and ask for his help. So remember that. Again, I would suggest pulling out that calendar. Pull out that calendar and look at your day. You've already looked at it and you said, oh, these are the good habits in my life. Maybe you need to look at that calendar and ask, what are the bad habits in my life? I mean, do you come home from work and binge watch a trashy TV show that's really wreaking havoc on your mind? Or maybe that coffee date that you have weekly with your friend has turned into a gossip session. Is that pleasing to the Lord? Is that giving him glory? Is it edifying the body? I would say no. So if you see bad habits in your life, I think it's really important to start getting rid of them now as quickly as possible. And don't let them start to rule you. Don't let them start to turn into something much worse. Remember the words of Paul. You say, I'm allowed to do anything, but not everything is good for you. You say, I'm allowed to do anything, but not everything is beneficial. Don't be concerned for your own good, but for the good of others. So think about that. Are your habits good for you, or are they bringing destruction to your life? Are they hurting you? Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. So think about that when it comes to bad habits. All right, we're going to talk about the ugly habits. Now, bad habits and ugly habits are different, and I want to make that clear. The ugly habits are the really destructive ones. They're the ones that can absolutely ruin your lives and ruin your relationships. And I want to make a point to say that bad habits can lead us to the road of ugly ones. I kind of mentioned that a minute ago, but think about certain things you do. If you binge watch trashy TV shows, they could lead you to pornography issues. They could lead you to lust issues. They could lead you to gossip issues. So think about that. But let's talk about a few examples of really ugly habits, things that are very dark. The first one being pornography. And I put that on the list first because that's something I dealt with for 13 years of my life. I lived in secrecy and fought this battle all by myself. And it was so destructive to my life, my relationships, all those things. Alcoholism, that's another one that people deal with. It's one of those ugly habits. Risky sexual behavior. Maybe you go out and do things you shouldn't be doing. Maybe you have an obsession over someone. Maybe there's someone that you work with or whatever that you just linger around or you think about when you're not around them. Maybe you inflict pain on yourself. Maybe you cut yourself because you just want to feel something. Maybe you gamble. Maybe you've wasted so much money, lost so much money, and it's causing a lot of anxiety and struggle because of it. Maybe you shop online uncontrollably and you just spend hours upon hours throwing things in a shopping cart, hoping that it'll make you feel better. See, these are just a few things that are ugly habits. There's so many more. And maybe you can think of another one. Maybe there's one in your life right now that you need to evaluate. Now, these ugly habits are usually the ones that are done in secret. And we hide them from our family, we hide them from our friends, and we hope that they'll never find out. But the deeper we get into those habits, the more destructive that they'll actually be. Now, listen to the words of Jesus in Luke 12:2. He says, "Nothing is covered up that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known." Proverbs 16:18 says, "Pride goes before destruction, and haughtiness," arrogance, "before a fall." Man, if we are holding on to this thing called pride, we're going to think that what we're doing is not wrong, it's not bad, it's not hurting anyone. But if that pride is the only thread left, when that pride loses its grip or it cuts itself down, you will find yourself in a very, very destructive place. See, the light, aka Jesus, will bring our ugly habits into view. That's what he's saying in Luke 12. It's just a matter of time before these things find us out. So if you put $2,000 on a credit card and you didn't tell your spouse about it, that's probably going to catch up with you. If you spent the morning looking at pornography, eventually those you care about are going to find out, or you're going to find yourself down an even darker path. Ugly habits need to be dealt with right now. Now, I get it. It's not something that you can just turn off. It's not something, like I said at the beginning, habits are hard to get rid of. But we need to work towards breaking those habits. We need to begin the work to push those habits out of our lives. And I believe when we start doing that work, the Lord will bless it. It doesn't mean it's not going to be hard. It doesn't mean there's not going to be consequences, but the Lord will bless it. And that's going to take a much deeper look inside of ourselves than just a schedule. So you're not going to be able to print out that schedule and say, yeah, I need to get rid of that, or I need to do that. Yeah, maybe those things happen within that, but you got to take an even deeper look. And it's going to require you to pray for God to reveal anything that's offensive inside of you. And I want you to know there is freedom from those chains. There is hope that you can embrace. And you don't have to give up on trying. Even if you've tried a million times, there's still people who want to help you. There's still people who care about you. And the one I know is Jesus. And the light, what he does doesn't expose us to humiliate us. He can expose it to help us. He allows us to see all the sides, to see that it's not as scary as maybe we thought. To bring these habits to light will help us tremendously. And I believe Jesus can do that. So we have to trust him. We have to lean on him in that way. So how do we allow our habits to draw us closer to the Lord? And this is what I want to end us talking about now. I think habits are a God-given thing. Again, we can abuse them, which can be bad or ugly habits. But we want to make sure that our habits are glorifying God. We want to make sure that they speak to his heart and they speak to the heart of his people. So as you evaluate your habits, good, bad, ugly, remember that God is for you and he wants you to have this beautiful thing called grace in your life. But those bad and ugly habits are going to lead you away where you don't feel like you can embrace that grace. So here's what I want you to do as you do this work on your own. Ask yourself this question. Does this habit allow me to love God and love his people? Or does this habit gratify the desires of my sinful nature? Now, I want you to hear that again. Does this habit allow me to love God and his people, or does this gratify the desires of my sinful nature? I want to end with this verse. It's from Galatians 5:13. For you have been called to live in freedom, my brothers and sisters. But don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love. All right, as we wrap up this episode, I want you to think about those habits. Think about which ones are in your life. Think about which ones that you can celebrate and which ones you need to work on in your life, which ones you need to add to your life. And I believe that once you focus on how God has given this as a tool for us, then you can start to see how we can use it for his benefit, his glory, and for loving him and loving others. Remember, there's this thing called a habit loop, and you've got these cues, you've got these routines, and you got these triggers. So ask yourself, what are those habit loops in my life? And again, how can I glorify God with them? All right, so be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to check out the YouTube channel, subscribe to that as well. Be sure to check out our Never Give Up videos. Head over to aarontlee.com and also check out some content that's there, as well as I just want you to know that it's really important to me to help people with this. So if you wouldn't mind, please share this. Help other people, not for me, but for them. If they're struggling with things like this, if they're struggling with habits that you've seen in their lives, if they're struggling with depression and anxiety or their faith journey, please share these episodes with them so that they can be encouraged, that they can find healing, that they can find that it's okay to keep going, to keep trying, to never give up. So let's go be real, let's live authentic, and let's get trying.